Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Stephen Romo in for Joe Fryer and Savannah Sellers today. Right now on Morning News Now, historic storm. More than 60 people are now dead after the massive winter storm that wreaked havoc across the U.S. And most of the deaths are in the Buffalo, New York area, where more people have died now than in any other snowstorm in recent history. Several roads in that region are still impassable, and the cleanup process is expected to be a long one. We have the latest from Buffalo and the much-needed relief that could be on the way. Ripple effects. The Southwest Airlines cancellation mess at airports continues around the country this morning. The airline already cut more than 2,000 flights today, with some passengers stranded now for multiple days. We'll show you the latest situation at airports and what Southwest is now saying about what happened. Staying in place, the Supreme Court votes to keep the Trump-era border policy known as Title 42 in effect. We'll explain what this means for the surge of migrants waiting to enter the U.S. and what comes next. Also this morning, saving Christmas. A group of strangers trapped in a Target store as the blizzard battered the Buffalo region on Christmas, but that did not stop them from keeping the holiday spirit alive. We'll talk to a mother who was inside that store with her kids coming up a bit later this hour. And we begin this morning with the latest on the cleanup and the aftermath from that historic winter weather. This morning, it's still having a huge impact across the country, on the ground and in the air. At least 65 people are now confirmed dead from that storm across the country, and 34 of those deaths are in upstate New York in what's become the deadliest story in the city of Buffalo's history. A driving ban remains in effect for Buffalo, where streets are still littered with hundreds of abandoned cars. Erie County's executive now pleading with people to stay off the roads.
Roads that are completely blocked right now, that have no access whatsoever. And people are trying to drive on these roads or trying to get into these neighborhoods, and they can't. Please, please, you heard the mayor beg, I'm begging, stay home.
You hear the desperation there. Well, there is some good news today, as Buffalo Niagara International Airport is expected to reopen after crews removed snow from more than 2 miles of runway. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of that storm, there was also a travel nightmare, specifically affecting Southwest Airlines passengers nationwide. Thousands of flights have already been canceled this week, and those headaches are likely to continue. We have much more on the major travel disruptions on Southwest ahead, including NBC's Shamari Jones in Baltimore-Washington International Airport, and more from the Points Guy managing editor Clint Henderson. We'll check in with meteorologist Angie Lassman for the forecast as well. But we begin with NBC News correspondent Marissa Pera in Buffalo. Marissa, good morning to you. So the temperatures there expected to warm up through the end of the week. That is some good news. Of course, will help with the snow problem there. But what's it looking like right now?
Yeah, so you can probably see behind me that these main roads are passable. We're seeing some cars able to drive past us, even though that driving ban is in effect. But you never know where they're on their way to. They may be part of the cleanup process. But the thing to keep in mind is that driving ban is in effect because they are still in the process of clearing roads, of taking away those cars that were left behind and abandoned when that snowstorm was really at its heaviest. So, yes, the cleanup is underway. We have seen public transit just barely starting to pick up as life starts to resume the way they knew it before this snowstorm.
Well, it was just over a month ago when Western New York also got hit with several feet of snow, Marissa. So I'm sure people were affected by both of those storms. Do we know how they're doing?
Yeah, so we've actually had a chance to talk with a number of them. We were actually here on the ground this last time. And before I kind of go into the differences between the two of them, I want to take you to one man our crews found. He was actually in true Buffalo style outside of his home on his front lawn drinking a beer with his pal. Here's what he had to say.
We could all keep up with it a little bit better, because it came in a little bit more waves where this just dumped, and you couldn't keep up with it when it was 79-mile-per-hour winds and 2 degrees outside. You can't come out and shovel it all. But before, it was a little bit warmer, less winds, so we could come out and shovel constantly. But this is our first chance really to shovel. It's a lot heavier and just a lot more of it.
So in true lake effect form, the snow totals are always going to vary depending on the neighborhood you're in, depending on the street. So that's always going to vary. In general, though, looking as a whole, the snow was less. The snow total was less this time around. But here's where things got so deadly and so much worse. It was so much colder. The wind speed was much higher. So really, at its peak, we saw wind chills of negative 20 degrees. And that is why we're seeing the death total that we are this time around.
Surprising there to hear the snow was actually less. And of course, that snow is eventually going to melt, and the temperatures are expected to rise there. So what potential problems come next?
Right. So when you have all of the snow that is gathered melting so quickly, there is always the question of, well, where does that precipitation go, right? What comes up must come down. When you have ice that is melting, it turns into water of some kinds, and the concern is that it's supposed to rain this weekend. They're going to get temperatures in the 40s and the 50s, which is really going to accelerate that snow melt, and on top of that, they're getting rain on top of that. So there are concerns about that, but I think right now everyone's trying to prepare for that while also getting cleanup underway, right? Handling one thing at a time here.
One thing at a time is all they can do. All right, Marissa, thanks so much. And let's get a check of your morning news now weather. Angie Lassman, good morning to you. So lots of people want to know how their forecast is shaping up. What you got for us?
Yeah, a roller coaster ride. I hope you guys like roller coasters because we were dealing with the Arctic air last week and, of course, the snow falling that Marissa was just talking about. And now we're going to see a big warm up. Places like Denver hit 50 degrees today. That is more than 70 degrees warmer than where we were in Denver just 6 days ago. So big temperature swing. And it's not just Denver. It spreads to the east. Indianapolis makes it to the 40s today. Memphis at 55 degrees and a whopping 71 degrees for Austin later this afternoon. Now, these temperatures are above normal, and this continues here as we go even into tomorrow. 60 degrees for Nashville, Pittsburgh at 48 degrees, 10 degrees above where we normally should be for this time of year. Into the 70s for Jacksonville, a big difference from what they were dealing with yesterday and even earlier this morning, where we were still seeing temperatures close to freezing in many locations. As we look ahead to the holiday weekend, places like Buffalo, Marissa mentioned that it is going to warm up, and indeed it is. 50 degrees by Friday. They are expecting some rain. I'll show you why here in a moment. It's really going to depend, that flooding, on just how much rain they get. But temperatures do stay into the mid 40s to upper 40s even through the weekend and into the new year. That goes for New York as well. Warmer conditions on the way for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday into the 50s. Our biggest issue over the next couple of days are going to be these multiple storms that come on shore on the West Coast. That's really where the bulk of the activity is going to be. And this last one that we saw bring rain to folks in Washington, Oregon, California yesterday continues to move to the east, bringing plenty of snow and as well some really strong winds to folks in the Rockies and northern and central Rockies through the day today. They get ready for another storm system. This is going to be multiple rounds of this that we see over the coming days. 4 to 5 storms are going to move on shore for folks on the West Coast. This is good for their drought, not so good when it comes all at once. We could be dealing with some flash flooding concerns, so that's one thing we will monitor. Snow in those higher elevations, the mountainous regions, expect that, and we'll also be watching for, with those periods of heavy rain continuing over, through Friday, we'll likely see some of that flash flooding concern as well. Now, that system that I showed you came on shore yesterday and is impacting folks in Denver and places like that, bringing snow. That eventually is going to sweep across the plains. We will see a severe potential for Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana on Thursday. If you're traveling places like Dallas, Houston, we could watch for some impacts there. That rain continues to spread to the east as that storm tracks to the east, too. This is what is going to bring some potential rain to folks in Buffalo, extending all the way down to the Gulf Coast, really. And this could also have a potential for some strong winds as well. There's the bullseye for the storms here as we get into Thursday. But if you're traveling today, the hot spots are going to be, or I guess I should say trouble spots, Seattle, Salt Lake City, Phoenix. Watch for those locations. East Coast looks great, even through Thursday into Friday. It'll start to get a little bumpy here as we get into Saturday and Sunday, but that New Year's outlook, if you have plans, maybe for New Year's Eve, do you have plans?
I do, but I've tried to put them on hold after the disaster over Christmas. Those temperatures, though, cannot believe that.
And you might need your rain gear if you're going to be out anywhere really in the East Coast.
You weren't kidding about that roller coaster.
But warm.
Warm? All right, I'll take it. Angie, thanks so much. All right, taking a closer look now at how the winter weather is causing a nationwide travel nightmare. Thousands of travelers have been hit with mass cancellations, specifically by Southwest Airlines, leaving so many people stranded, some of them quite far from home. Nearly 70% of the airline's scheduled flights were canceled on Monday, and company officials say more cancellations are expected today and tomorrow. My husband and I had our flights canceled by Southwest, like so many others did. Here's a look at our journey back home. Monday morning at 10:30 a.m. in St. Louis, and this is the line of Southwest passengers trying to rebook flights after being canceled. My husband and I are trying to get back to New York among these other frustrated flyers. Southwest abruptly canceled our flight this morning without giving us a reason. Now, the phone system is down right now, but earlier they told us we couldn't get back until Friday. The line here for the ticket counter stretches all the way across the building, but the TSA line is all but deserted, giving you some indication of how many flights are actually getting out. By Monday afternoon, after waiting for 3.5 hours to talk to a ticket agent, we got booked on standby. But then overnight came the inevitable news. There was no text message, no email. I just checked the app and another Southwest flight cancellation. So now renting a car, going to a different city, different airport, different airline, trying to make it back. With a reservation on a United flight out of Louisville, we needed to drive 4 hours. But rental cars were booked up in the St. Louis area. After a bunch of calls, we got a reservation, a half an hour's drive away. But then,
your destination is on the left.
We discovered there were a lot of people waiting around for those cars. Oh no. So an update arrived at the place this morning. It was a glitch in the system that allowed us to book a car because they had none available. So right now we're scrambling to find a rental car so we can drive 4 hours to Louisville, Kentucky and make our flight. But at least we have our luggage. The producer for this story is also stuck in Missouri, busy working on this report. So Noah Frick Aloff's mom went to try to find his lost bag. It could not be located in this sad sea of suitcases.
A Southwest Airlines employee just told my mom I won't be getting my bag back. I'll be headed back to New York without my luggage, and not on Southwest. Their rebooking website shows the next available flight will be this Sunday, so instead, I'm driving 5 hours to Chicago and taking an American Airlines flight back to New York.
So the next leg of the journey, we haven't been able to find a rental car anywhere from Illinois to Indiana on our way to Louisville. So we've had to borrow my in-laws' vehicle, their personal vehicle. And even when we finally make it back to New York, the journey's not over because they're going to have to find the time to drive all the way to the Louisville airport to pick up the vehicle. So I happen to have the best in-laws in the world. They still have to go pick up that vehicle. Spoiler alert, I did make it back to New York. A lot of people had it a lot worse than we did, though. Southwest Airlines already canceled about 2,500 flights to date, nearly 1,400 for tomorrow. So for more on all this, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Shamari Stone, who
Good morning,
joins us
Stephen.
now
I'm
from
here
Baltimore.
at BWI, and I tell you, I've talked to passengers this morning, and many of them tell me that they are very frustrated. Take a look right over here. Look at this screen. You have approximately, I counted, 60 or more canceled flights. Right here, you can see this is all Southwest Airlines, and over here, a sea of luggage. Take a look. These people right here who work for Southwest Airlines are sorting this luggage, and you have suitcases and bags at the staging area set up for travelers to get them back. Crews most likely removed these bags from canceled flights, or they were lost in transit over the last few days. And it's a similar scene at some airports across the nation, such as in Chicago and New York. Although many airlines were forced to cancel flights, Southwest Airlines had the most, more than 70% of its flights on Monday. That's around 2,900 flights, according to FlightAware. Now, Southwest airline officials are, again, trying to sort these bags. The goal is to try and get them back to the passengers. We talked to one woman who told me that this is absolutely ridiculous, and she came here to try and get her bag, and she claims that Southwest Airlines can't find it. Back to you, Stephen.
All right, a huge mess out there, Shamari. So if you would stand by, also want to bring in Clint Henderson, the Points Guy managing editor. So Clint, what led up to all these problems for Southwest? So many people asking about this. Was it actually the weather, or was something else going on?
I'm so sorry that you were caught up in that mess, and it really is a mess. So part of it was weather. It was triggered certainly by the weather. But part of the issue is that Southwest goes point to point. They don't have a hub and spoke system, which works great in normal operations. But when things start to go wrong, it's a domino effect. And next thing you know, planes and crews are completely out of position. In this case, you also had a technological issue with some of the back-end software engineering and IT systems just completely overwhelmed. Southwest has been investing in these systems, but clearly they haven't invested enough, especially as they've expanded. So you've got a combination of the weather, staffing issues, and then, of course, not being able to even schedule flight attendants, et cetera, and it's just been a total disaster.
Yeah, I've spoken to many flight attendants as well. They've had plenty of trouble. And Clint, we also heard from Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg about how the Department of Transportation is handling this breakdown. Let's listen.
They told me in their words that they will go above and beyond their written customer service plan. I'm going to be holding them accountable for doing that.
Does that mean financial compensation?
Absolutely. At a minimum, there need to be cash refunds for the canceled flights, and they need to be taking care of passengers where they got stuck with meals, hotel compensation. Now, they've put up a website to get those kinds of requests in.
So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of requests, Clint. So what are passengers owed when something like this happens, and how can they actually get compensated?
So this is the concerning thing. There's a lot of wiggle room, especially if an airline can blame weather. They don't technically have to pay you back. Now, I will say Southwest has said they will reimburse passenger for reasonable expenses they've incurred, rebooking themselves, getting meals, getting Ubers like you tried to do, booking themselves on other airlines. But that word reasonable has a lot of wiggle room in it. And we really are going to be expecting the government to hold Southwest accountable to reimburse people for all these costs they've incurred. Some people can't even afford to rebook themselves, and they've been stuck at airports. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on Southwest to make it right for consumers. And so far, they're saying the right words.
Well, Shamari, I wanted to ask you, the Southwest CEO, Bob Jordan, he's responded to this meltdown. What's he saying, and how do they try to climb out of this? Don't have much time here left.
Well, he's saying that this is unacceptable in terms of the performance, and Southwest Airlines has apologized. Let's take a listen.
I want everyone who is dealing with the problems we've been facing, whether you haven't been able to get to where you need to go, or you're one of our heroic employees caught up in a massive effort to stabilize the airline, to know is that we're doing everything we can to return to a normal operation. And please also hear that I'm truly sorry.
Now, back out here live, this was just put up moments ago. You can see here it says LAX. That's where this bag belongs. Take a look right here. You got Dallas. And keep in mind, we are in Baltimore right now. San Francisco, Houston, and come right over here, Florida. Coincidentally, the woman I talked to who said that this is ridiculous, well, she says her bag is being sent back to Florida. A lot of confusion for people. Some people tell me that they slept in hotels. They're stranded. They're trying to rebook their flights. Some are having a longer vacation with their family and friends. The goal right now is to get back home and get all their luggage. Back to you, Stephen.
So many people in rough situations. Shamari, Clint, thank you both so much. All right, turning to some breaking news we're following now out of the Vatican on the health of former Pope Benedict. The Vatican says the 95-year-old's condition has worsened over the last few hours. NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald joins us now for more on this. So, Megan, what exactly do we know about Benedict's condition?
Well, as you mentioned, that was certainly shocking news that we heard overnight from Pope Francis saying and confirming that former Pope Benedict, his health right now is he's very sick. We also know from the Vatican just releasing the statement moments ago saying that the former Pope Benedict had a sudden worsening of his health in recent hours due to his age, but that he's under constant monitoring by medical doctors that are watching closely, and that right now his condition is under control. But, keep in mind, we're talking about a former pope that's 95 years old, and that his health had been deteriorating in the last several years. And we know that Pope Francis has kept in close contact with him over the last several years, visiting him constantly, most recently just this morning. But of course, this is a very concerning situation for not only those within the Vatican, but certainly across the world.
Yeah, a whole lot of people paying attention to this, Megan. And Pope Francis is actually the one who revealed his predecessor's condition just before we heard that statement from the Vatican. What was the Pope's message on this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so the Pope is asking for the world to pray. I mean, we know that he's 95 years old, that he isn't in the best of health. He hasn't been in the best of health. Now we're understanding that it's deteriorating rapidly. But he is asking the world to pray at this point. And of course, the world is paying close attention. We, of course, will be following this closely to keep an eye on how he is doing, because obviously this is a very touch and go situation.
Now, we know he stepped down, Benedict did, a decade ago. He's been Pope Emeritus since. Do we know, has he been in poor health in recent months? And what kind of role has he been playing before this?
Yeah, so we know that his health has been deteriorating at 95 years old. And, over the last several years, as you know, he's sort of taken a step back from the public eye. He certainly made history, though, when he was elected in 2005. He was the first German pope in 1,000 years to be elected. And then, of course, he was 78 years old, being the oldest pope to ever be elected at that point, until he stepped down in 2013. And, of course, that was a huge step. I mean, we've never seen a pope do that in over 600 years. And he said at the point that he did that, that it was a lack of strength of mind and body. That, of course, was something that was unheard of, to see a pope step down. But again, right now, all eyes are on former Pope Benedict's health as the world is praying for his condition.
Him stepping down was a big surprise to everyone. All right, Megan, we'll check back in with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.